Well, hello there, and welcome to another recording of the Social Media News Roundup. We are back for more news, reviews, rant and raves about your favorite social network. I say we because, of course, I'm joined by Natalie Eminae from Okoko Media. Natalie, how are you doing?
I'm very good, and thank you for having me back, Pascal.
Well, we're getting good at this. I was saying, we're going to stick to the plan. Every month we come back to you with the updates, things to consider about that may have, a bearing on your own activities. Now, if you're new to the show, whether you're watching it or listening on the audio-only version, we have two clear segments. Number one, the tour of the platform, the announcements, those that perhaps you may have missed. And we tend to stick, Natalie, to the one that definitely have an impact on our planning and execution of the campaign. Segment number two, faster, we're looking at contents, we're looking at strategies, we're looking at apps that can make life easier. And then we wrap it up nicely with some final thoughts. But this is all about providing a better service to your social network. So, Natalie, over to you. Which platform would you like to start with?
Oh, there's always so many to choose from, but I think for today we'll start with one that perhaps would typically be slightly later in the pack, and that would be LinkedIn, if that's okay, Pascal.
Go.
Fab. So in February, looking for March onwards and the remainder of the year, the LinkedIn CEO Ryan Roslansky has conducted quite well in the world of social media. This would be considered, I'm sure, a tell-all interview with the Wall Street Journal. Now, it's perhaps not as exciting as that may sound, but certainly for those that are keen to do a little bit more with their LinkedIn through 2022, it gives us a few little hints and tips of the things that we might want to focus especially on. So, on a, I guess, kind of technical level, and in terms of improving user experience and certainly encouraging audiences to enjoy LinkedIn for the content that they want to see. We are seeing LinkedIn at the moment in the US trialing a no politics setting. So this means that you can go onto LinkedIn, you can set in your settings that you don't want to see anything political. This is perhaps less relevant for UK at the moment, but it's interesting to see, and certainly because we are not near an election period in the UK, it might be something that we see has more applications as we are a few months and years down the line. But essentially, it's on the basis of wanting to give LinkedIn users an experience that submerses them in a business world and means that they're not getting any content that they might not particularly want to be bogged down by. It's the first platform to trial anything like this, and certainly with, I guess, ghosts and sort of lingering sentiment of the Cambridge Analytica scandal, which is not that far, in sort of memory. It's interesting to see LinkedIn want to continue to be the most professional, the most trusted platform, and we are seeing with the Microsoft takeover a lot of focus around trust, which helps us as marketers because we get to hang out and share our content and share our thoughts and share our kind of thought leadership in this space where audiences are coming there to listen, to have a business experience, and to contribute positively. So it gives us a nicer take on social networking, potentially, and really interesting to see such a feature be trialed.
It's interesting because, could it lead to other things where you could actually select a subject matter you want to hear more of, as opposed to less of? That makes any sense. So you say, listen, this is my industry, this is where my interests lie. Because I know that the algorithm are meant to be doing that, but I can't be sure that they are as helpful. But if you said, listen, or even if you could pose on the subject matter to say, listen, I want to hear more about maybe hybrid working, so a bit less about content marketing and do it that way.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's something that if you looked at sort of LinkedIn topics where you can follow a topic, that's a very, very clunky version of what you've just described as something that might work very, very well for the platform. But as my second point on LinkedIn, a seamless link in, we are seeing them continue to push creator mode with the idea of people focusing on creating content that's on a particular subject matter. So I think it's really about adding that value experience on LinkedIn, and again helping people discover more of what they want to see and less of what they don't want to see on a more individual level, less of the algorithm giving you the content that it thinks you're going to engage with, and having something that's a little bit more cooperative in terms of you can opt into seeing certain types of content that are interesting, or perhaps certain types of content that you want to learn more about, not just necessarily the content you typically would talk about and engage with. So it's really interesting to see a little bit more of a democratic social media take from LinkedIn on the platform for 2022. And those new features will be rolling out quite gradually, with a little bit of testing here and there, but definitely something to watch out for.
Anything else that was shared during that interview with the Wall Street Journal?
Yeah, so they did a lot of focus on LinkedIn user groups, and particularly one of the things that we typically know is a LinkedIn audience compared to a standard digital audience has a lot more buying power, a lot more clout. They did a little bit of a reveal into LinkedIn movement of individuals, and we were looking at recruitment in particular, and within the key age demographic of 16 to 22, job moves are actually up 70% in that area. So we're seeing LinkedIn a little bit more for career development and a bit more movement and connection potential there. If we compare that age demographic to the over 55s, though, that drops to 7% up on typical job movement. So we are seeing more movement, recruitment, but it's very much certain levels of industry, perhaps a bit more at that junior level, and finding feet and finding careers. But interesting for LinkedIn in terms of the recruitment and vacancies that it will push on the platform, because typically if we're advising a client for recruitment, we would typically recommend Facebook as a social marketing route for a more junior role, and LinkedIn for a more senior executive role, simply based on cost prohibitive nature of LinkedIn job and recruitment ads. It typically means that you'll be looking for something with a more of a substantial budget. Whereas if you just want to give a vacancy a bit of a boost, then perhaps Facebook will be more suited if it's the right vacancy. But typically those a little bit further down the food chain have a good fit there. So interesting to see, and we may start to see that trickle down into some more affordable LinkedIn recruitment options, and additional tools that really help us capitalize on the fact that there is that much job movement within that key 16 to 22 demographic.
Fascinating. Anything else that you were able to glean from that article?
You won't be surprised, Pascal, and I thought of you as soon as I read this, that video is everything. It was a soundbite from the interview. We are seeing a shift from your traditional profile picture towards new tools that are going to allow 30-second video intros. They will apparently be rolling out with prompts on your profile. So as soon as you are able to create one, LinkedIn is anticipating that it's going to tell you that you can create one. And these can be, I guess, kind of nice introductions to you as an individual. It's a little bit of an expansion on the feature that we saw, and we will have talked about last year, I'm certain, about pronunciation of names, where you could do a little audio recording to advise how your name is pronounced. Interesting to see that. And again, I think it really features around that human to human connection, and the fact that LinkedIn is moving more towards a I guess more wholesome user experience. We're also seeing a few additional tools around about managing your notifications, so helping audiences switch on and switch off, getting less of what you don't want to see, but in notification form. So some slightly more advanced controls around what you're going to get push notification for, what you might want to see and not want to see. It's offering the holy grail. And I'm hoping that this is going to be a free feature, although I do have a premium profile myself, because I think this would benefit the masses so much, which is the opportunity to opt out of receiving promotional InMail. So you'll still receive messages from your connections, but those InMail spammy messages that you get saying, I'm hosting a leadership course for, I guess they usually, the ones I get, Pascal, are women that want to have it all. And they're so cringy, and you're like, oh my goodness, why am I fitting the profile for this? I don't want anything to do with it. But quite heavy pressure sell on the like, lose weight, rejuvenate your life, be a better person. And it's just No one wants that in their LinkedIn inbox. So I will be really pleased if we can get rid of that just as a feature. Would be really nice. And just a little bit more of a cleanup around making the app and the website in particular a little bit more user experience friendly. Anyone that uses LinkedIn regularly on a desktop will know that there's quite a lot going on. Just anything they can do to clean that up, particularly around having better options between the light and dark mode and more segmentation so that the bits that are more important to you will be more visible. So yeah, really interesting kind of revelations from LinkedIn on how it's moving towards being a more trusted, more kind of user-friendly platform that really wants to seemingly respond to giving people more of what they want, which is not always how social networks treat our mass user bases. So nice to see, I think.
And it's nice to spend some time on LinkedIn, for the reason that you mentioned. Now, what is interesting for me is the interview suggests, oh, video is everything, but we know they've also spent some time on audio only. So a little scoop for you. Roger Edwards yesterday spotted his first LinkedIn audio room taking place.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was just a bit random. I think one of his contacts. Yeah. So once again, we don't get the option to do it, even though we spend our lives on LinkedIn, and people do. And why not? I hope I don't have to wait as long as I did for the live video option. But what it was saying, Roger said the sound was really good actually in the conversation. So for me, it's interesting because that's the news about audio rooms, and also, I know that I mentioned I was going to mention some news, but I'll do it now. LinkedIn is launching a podcast network.
Oh, wow.
And there will be, so a network suggests a number of shows, very much like a Netflix, but audio only. Mm-hmm. They're going to have their in-house news team doing their own show. They're also going to have the other co-founder of LinkedIn, Reid Hoffman, which is a much easier name to say than the one you mentioned earlier. Well done, by the way. And he's going to have his own podcast on personal entrepreneurship called The Startup of You. So there's the audio stuff as well going on.
Yeah, I think the audio gives a nice user experience. And for me personally, I will put on a lot of video and a lot of audio. I do listen to quite a few business podcasts. But I typically find, even if I've got video, I'll be doing something else in the background. I'll be looking at some emails, looking at some stats, taking that time to read a little bit of reporting. So I think for a lot of business individuals, the podcast is definitely a really nice, accessible way to kind of consume content without having to, stop everything in order to stay updated on your typical subjects and interest matters.
As you know, video has been and will remain my first love, but with the work that I do with Roger on the 2 Gigs and Marketing podcast, I'm really understanding audio more than ever before, not just from a construct point of view, but you're right, from this idea of how people can listen to it by doing something else. With video, you have to concentrate. What would be really a breakthrough for LinkedIn and with this idea of podcast network, if they had indeed a listening app. So literally it's playing on your phone and you get it with something else, because if you have to have LinkedIn open all the time, that's going to be a bit of a barrier. So now, wish them well. And with regard to LinkedIn, as a platform, yeah, I agree, a bit clunky sometimes. You look at what's happening with events, what's happening with groups and so on, and you feel, come on, make an effort. But overall, I think, despite the fact that we were worried when Microsoft bought them all those years ago, I think overall it's really providing good value for no cost.
Yeah, completely.
Super. Well, after LinkedIn, which I think it's been lovely to talk about them for a while, which platform would you like to get to?
Well, on the subject of CEOs giving away all of the secrets, we also saw a revealing video. Perhaps that's not the best way to frame this. From the Instagram CEO this month, basically doing a bit of a deep dive into the Instagram algorithm, and it's something that occasionally we see platforms talk about, but really is not discussed enough. I first saw this because it was having a bit of a moment on Twitter, and then jumped over to Instagram to watch it. So it was a bit of an unusual, network discovery journey for me personally. But really, really interesting to see. The video itself is 11 minutes long, but it is worth the 11 minutes for taking that time out to better understand the Instagram algorithm. And there's some bits in there that we kind of already knew and everyone has a bit of an idea on, but it's nice to have that information reiterated, and it's nice to see the exact wording and how that can be framed to audiences, because sometimes there's a little bit more in the delivery rather than just the words that help you really identify what's going to make the difference. To give you a little bit of kind of an overview without detracting from the full 11 minutes, one of the key features, which predictably, if you had to say what would be a factor in an algorithm, it's the post popularity indicators. That's basically the main area they initially discuss. So that's like the likes, the things that we can control, like the duration of a video, if it's video content for Instagram and those sorts of things. And that goes in line with, Instagram's best practice recommendations, how close you are to producing the content that they would like you to produce, and how well you're kind of towing the line. The other factors are really the frequency at which you are posting, the frequency at which your audiences are logging on, how many posts a user has liked as to whether it's displayed in their individual timelines, and the user's engagement with the account overall. Now, none of that in itself is groundbreaking, but put together, and we start to see Instagram as more of a reward option for consistently good content. It's about the account as a whole a little bit more than it is about the post. Not massively, it's not like one of those platforms that becomes then too difficult to hack, but realistically, we are seeing Instagram focus more on taking audiences on a cohesive journey with lots of different posts that they like to see over a longer period of time, rather than being that Instagram one hit wonder. You might post one great bit of content and then loads of dodgy bits of content. It's all about getting it right consistently. And I think while that offers great opportunity for businesses and organizations that are able to get on that treadmill and sort of keep going, for organizations that find it a little bit trickier to stay on top of their social media, this could be something that means your Instagram strategy needs a little bit of extra attention, or perhaps even a complete overhaul, depending on how consistent you currently are with it.
Wow, as you said, revealing. It's but that's exactly what this series is all about. We take the trouble to research this stuff. We'll put the link in the show notes to the video. You can watch it yourself. I remember all those years ago when Facebook launched the F8 conference. Remember, we're looking for because it was the time where once a year they would just give us a bit of an insight into what's going on, and there was one presentation for one guy say, "Okay, let us tell you how we score if a typical Facebook post, literally a score out of 10." And once you listen, you kind of go, it's very logical. It's also very plausible. And this is within our reach and means. What I mean to say, Natalie, is that any of us don't have to be a kind of full-time or career marketer. You could listen to the logic and kind of go, yeah, I mean, in fairness, that would have been the ambition or the intention of someone running a magazine or a radio show. This idea of the engagement, this idea of the regularity of the show, and the reaction from the audience. So, of course, the magazine was a bit harder, but with the radio, people could ring. So there was always, hints about, how we're doing. Of course, then you could also organize focus groups. That's going back some decades for me. I've not done those for a very, very long time. So I kind of like that. And I know that the whole kind of meta organization are looking more so than ever before. I've said, they could have done it sooner, but we are where we are, in and around, of course, bad behavior, in and around, obviously, the impact on all of us, not just the young generation. And I think it's interesting. It feels like people are putting the work in to tidy all this up.
Absolutely. And I think as networks sort of start to introduce better practice features, the race will be to lead the pack in terms of, user experience, in terms of, are you looking after your audiences? And I think the more that it's on, mass audience public radar, the more these features will resonate with users, and it could make all the difference in terms of people's preferred platforms and time spent on each network. So it's important stuff, but it's clearly about the marathon and not the sprint when it comes to Instagram for 2022.
Excellent. I like that because you're right. People have heard the advice of you've got to be posting so many times. And in the beginning, you start to feel anxious. Well, I can't do that. I said, well, do what you can instead. But what you do needs to count. Well, I mentioned Meta a moment ago. So let's go to Facebook, the big blue. So what's the news there?
Exciting news for Facebook for anyone who is a video fan and a short form video fan. Facebook is getting Reels. So Reels previously have been an Instagram product, and we are seeing it transition directly across to Facebook. So Reels has been tested in the USA, I believe, but it's rolling out in 150 countries from end of February, beginning of March onwards. So you may have it yet. It may be on your radar for something that's coming out. This is in the wake of Facebook advising that half of the time on the platform, and also half of the time spent on Instagram as well, is audiences consuming video. And Reels allow businesses and individuals to share videos that are up to 60 seconds long. They're fully immersive, a little bit like stories. So they take up the kind of the whole screen, but it gives you the opportunity to create content that is still technically short form, not quite as 10 seconds as stories, but it is non-disposable. So until you delete that reel, it will stay visible on your platform, on your profile. So it's a little bit more kind of long haul than it would be for your super disposable 10-second story segment, but it's not quite the commitment to longer form video. And for a lot of businesses, I think 60 seconds is a really, really powerful time duration. It gives you enough time to say something meaningful, but there is still audience appetite for that brand discovery to then do something else. So usually as businesses, if we're marketing and we want to capture audience interest with a video, we then want that audience to do something else, whether that's send us a message, add a comment, ask a question, like the video, click through to a website, being the sort of holy grail for lots of marketing campaigns to then get that web traffic. So that 60-second kind of limit is a little bit of a sweet spot, and interesting to see Facebook launching with such focus to kind of reward its audiences. We are also getting some new features for Reels. So these are applicable for Facebook and for Instagram. We are going to be able to remix our own reels and the reels of others. So a little bit more of a community content, and dare I say, inspired by a TikTok style kind of user interactivity approach. You can also draft and edit a little bit easier on Facebook itself. So while those are not going to set the world on fire with, oh, new draft feature launch for Reels, it means that simply from a content creation point of view, it is a little bit easier to be creating that video content directly for Facebook or Instagram.
Wow. And you know what's interesting? I came across the news, an announcement actually from Instagram, that they will no longer support IGTV because they wanted to focus their efforts on Reels. But I didn't actually hear then understand that, because I thought, well, why not? But I didn't realize that that means that they could then spend time on the Facebook platform and bring the Reels in. 60 seconds, people can say a lot and express a lot, particularly if you're smart. And sometimes it may be that you don't use voice, but more animation. You know, with there was a company in Teesside that perhaps is still trading that were called the 60-second story, because they had already it was like a video production company, that old-fashioned way, wasn't using mobile phones then, but they were trying to find a way for local business to tell their story in 60 seconds. And you can, if you understand structure and so on, and perhaps something we can revisit. But the remix stuff, that's interesting. And when you see you can remix someone else's reels, is it very much like on YouTube with YouTube shorts and clips, where because it's in the public domain, that's where you sign, where you don't read, none of this should read the terms and conditions, pretty much says the content on Facebook can be used by others.
Yes, I think it will be exactly along those lines. And interesting to see, I guess, the kind of trend with consumption of content is often to see someone else's take on it. So, will we see reels of people reacting to reels? A little bit like we might in a typical after show, or even in terms of YouTube videos where you're kind of watching a content creator comment on other things. So it sort of opens up a whole new commentary potential, which would be interesting to see. I think again, this might be a case of social networks paying attention to the content that works, because there's a lot of content creators out there already putting out that style of content. Particularly on Facebook Watch, one of their bigger creators is a guy called Brad Mondo, who comments on hair dye videos. So if you're doing a YouTube tutorial about how you would dye your hair, he's a professional hairdresser and will sort of weigh in on what you're doing really well and what you could be doing better. And is often very, kind and sympathetic to the cause, but not really afraid to comment on people's successes and perhaps less so to some extent. But that type of content is achieving huge visibility numbers for Facebook. And they've kind of gone in that direction of being able to make that into a little bit more of a community cohesive hub, which is really interesting to see.
Super. And just to close on Facebook and move on to the next network for you, whilst it didn't make the headlines, or once again, it's one of those where they don't tell anybody, I've heard some very good report on those running Facebook groups saying, yeah, it's some very, very tiny little details that Facebook is improving upon, because we know that's part of their strategy. Facebook groups is huge. We know live Facebook groups and advertising is where you and I would promote all the time. Okay, well, can we move on to one of my favorites, really, Twitter?
Oh, well, Twitter, we are seeing a few rumours coming out of the Twitter mail. So I'm afraid I don't have a full tell-all exclusive with Twitter. However, rumour has it that their new chief exec is really championing decentralization of Twitter. So this might be a focus on, rather than Twitter as a global platform, as Twitter is a global platform but is ran in different ways in different areas to better respond to what individual communities and countries need from the platform. It's an interesting take, and all that we have at the moment is perhaps a focus on, does there need to be a stronger strategy for Twitter UK based on the way that a UK audience would interact on the platform, stronger Twitter strategy for Twitter US. So all these, I guess, micro trends on the platform that are, we're talking, continental trends, not necessarily, three people in a local community. But for a global platform, those are much smaller than the overall trends that they've got. And we see Twitter do quite well with this in terms of its marketing. So I know last time we'll have talked about the Twitter marketing guides and the tweet planners and everything for 2022. And they do release them on a country by country basis. But this is the first hint of suggesting that the platform could be run in slightly different ways depending on geographically where you are in the world, which is interesting. And I'm not sure about you, Pascal, but the first time that I've heard anything like this even sort of suggested around a global platform.
And you know what was interesting is it's back to this. It's not the best performing platform in terms of numbers. If you look at the dashboard, the ranking, globally and so on, Twitter's always further down, and people have had their misgivings of platform, but it just keeps going. And I think it's back to this idea of is still the platform looking for its real kind of coup, the real move that's going to allow it to maybe go from a fourth, fifth place to maybe a silver or a bronze. I think that's what it's looking for. But I've got a bit of interesting news for you. So like you and I, people will keep track of what's happening, looking at the news, but others use different means. For example, they go into the patents office to see what is being literally sent by the likes of Google and Facebook as a prediction of the future. And somebody was able to come across some code, literally people have been programming code, suggesting that Twitter might even get into becoming a podcasting platform.
Oh, that's very interesting.
So, well, we've got LinkedIn launching a podcast network, but I don't think it sounds like becoming a podcasting device almost or environment. But this one, the guy that could read the code suggesting it reads and sounds like Twitter saying, use Twitter to record, publish, and maybe even edit a podcast. Fascinating, isn't it?
That's really interesting, and some excellent detective work from whoever did go into that patent office and track that down.
Yeah.
I can definitely see the potential, because Twitter is all about the conversation. It's all about, I guess, sharing that immediate reaction. I think it would be a natural platform. It's definitely the platform that I typically would go to personally to get my news and to get my thought leadership. So I think it would just be a very natural extension to bring in a bit more voice, a bit around podcasts. Absolutely, I'll be excited to see where that one goes.
I mean, Twitter Space is doing well. I almost wish I had just more time to listen to my pals as well as take part. And just as a little kind of insider information, Natalie and I are looking into this idea of going live with this show, both video on a platform and audio on Twitter, and see if we can break the internet that way. But, let's close as we've done before. It's always a pleasant way to close with Pinterest.
Oh, I love Pinterest. It's one of my favorite networks to just use, and also favorite network to stay on top of the latest news from, because Pinterest is always very, very helpful and always wants to present itself as a network that's really leading the way with the latest trends and sharing that information with its users and the creators on the platform. And as no surprise, this month in March, we've got Pinterest Presents, which is their annual kind of big event. This year it's hosted by Tan France. So they usually bring in a little bit of a big name to really keep us entertained between segments. It's a nice, I guess, immersive hour, and it is only 1 hour, which makes it very, very easy to carve out that time in a diary. And for me, the segments are the perfect length, because it gives a really deep dive in about 8 to 10 minutes on one particular topic, and then we'll go to the next, to the next, to the next. So it means that even if there is a section that's perhaps slightly less applicable to your business or to the businesses that you work with, there's something more relevant coming around in a moment. It also keeps the presenters really fresh, because often at this type of kind of summit or kind of broadcast, you are talking to the technical team who are super passionate about what they do, but perhaps not stand-up comedians. So it allows you to do that really deep technical dive and then still stay fresh for the next session, because you're not you're getting the full overview in 8 minutes rather than the really in-depth technical bits that you don't quite understand in 20 minutes. So it's a really, really nice event. That is next week. So depending on when you are watching this, you'll either be able to register to watch it live, or you'll be able to watch it on catch up. Simply Google Pinterest Presents and you're going to find it. They are rumoring some new features. There's some new AR around home decor, a new feature called Try On. So you can actually physically imagine what that beautiful home decor product is going to look like in your living space, which is nice. Some new shopping tools. There's set to be a research presentation, so talking about a little bit of research in terms of what audiences want to see. And as always with Pinterest, a bit of a deep dive into their trend predictions, so looking at what they think is going to be massive on the platform. And the nice bit about that is it's content that is typically going to be massive on Pinterest, but it's content that might also be massive in the wider web and in audience kind of consciousness. So even if you are not necessarily doing a lot with Pinterest, it's a great place to get a bit of inspiration and a bit of advice on wider digital trends generally. Plus, for 1 hour of your time to spend in March, I can't really think of a better way to spend it.
Do you know, I'm actually not I'm from a B2B environment, so of course Pinterest is always on the maybe to another time list, but I am actually intrigued by the format of that conference. And I think I would attend just to understand how you can have an impact in 8 to 10 minutes, because as you know, I'm a long form type of content creator and presenter, and I need to challenge myself to look at short form a lot more, and I think that's the case for many of us out there. I think, yeah, that'd be very interesting. How do they do it? And it just explains that for yourself. But am I right in thinking that whilst when Pinterest first started, people did try to find different ways for all sectors to get involved, but they really have niched it down to B2C shopping experience, with everything that comes with it.
Completely. And there are, there's huge potential on Pinterest for whatever you want to research as an individual. So, as an individual, there's going to be, if you want leadership, thoughts, motivation, there's plenty of content for you to enjoy on Pinterest. In terms of retail and e commerce, and really strategies that deliver a clear return on investment, typically, to really crack Pinterest, you want to be able to sell online. You want to be able to sell something that is, less of a considered purchase, perhaps to achieve numbers. And it really is all about those beautiful product and tangible things that audiences can imagine. So it's an interesting platform. It's a very, very nice space, and it's a nice place to be from a digital experience perspective. But for winning, for achieving, a great return on sales, for getting ad campaigns that deliver a lot of clicks and a lot of checkouts and a lot of kind of completed transactions, it's really a bit more for the B2C side that sell really nice things to look at and things that people want to buy or buy.
Sure, it's a visual experience, and I think the smartness of using the pins and the boards and everything it just feels that you're in a very different place, which I think on occasion you can't say that so much of other social networks, you could argue. Only today I was commenting on, I was giving a review of the different texts and apps you could use. I was with Johnny Ross actually on his podcast. You know him, I know. And we were talking about, Canva being essentially the ultimate companion for small business owners, but then you have other solutions. But when you look at them, they all look like Canva too. And you could say, well, never mind, what are you complaining? But actually, it's just that, just as an experience, I want to go elsewhere. The same way you go to a different restaurant, you go to different theaters, you look at different magazines. Even when you go streaming, Netflix looks different to Amazon Prime, that looks different to Disney Plus. So I think with Pinterest, they've just done that well.
Completely.
Wow, well done, and thank you so much for doing the research. That's going to be the end of part one of this social media news roundup. Next, I'm going to surprise you with some news, Natalie. Well, surprise you. You probably have heard the news already, in fairness. But I just want to get your reaction. I'm going to go through the news, and we may even ask Tim to put some dramatic music if you watch on replay. But here we go. According to LinkedIn, recruiters are having trouble finding marketers with skills in digital strategy, omniture, link building, search advertising, and off-page SEO. The fastest growing occupations on LinkedIn are media coordinator, search manager, and social media coordinator. TikTok has been increasing video time length to 10 minutes for some accounts. It's been testing new features such as enabling users to create a digital character avatar based on a selfie, new group chat options, subscriptions tools, and of course, audio-only live streaming on TikTok. How strange. According to marketingdive.com, QR codes are back and here to stay. Once dismissed as gimmicky, advertisers are embracing the black and white labels across all media, including social media, in fact. Finally, Marks & Spencer has launched live shopping on its e-commerce website, a shoppable live broadcast series in which customers can hear about a product range, pose questions to a Marks & Spencer's expert, and buy products as they watch. So now, let's go back to the first one on LinkedIn. Now, skill shortage is across all industries, not just digital, but very, very interesting that employers are struggling to find where there's more thinking behind it, and strategies and so on. But the fastest growing occupation, social media coordinator, that should please you.
Yes, absolutely. I can see this from both sides because as a recruiter, so as someone that recruits people to come and work into the digital sphere, we are always looking for very particular sets of skills. And we see a lot of kind of graduates who perhaps haven't got their head around what exactly a digital marketing career looks like. And you see these sort of like missed points on their radar, or you see a lot of confusion between what exactly a digital element is. We have a lot of people where we'll be interviewing for a social media kind of vacancy, and they'll be telling us all about how they want to work in SEO, and you're like, okay, well, that's great, but this isn't the right job for you. So we do see a bit of blurring of boundaries, and to get a little bit controversial, I blame institutions for that, because I feel like if you are doing a marketing degree, perhaps the institution that you are doing that at should set you up better in terms of educating on career opportunities and I guess the niche elements that you need to consider going into. And then I also see it from a business perspective, where businesses are like, oh, we need to recruit a social media person. That social media person should be able to be a fantastic copywriter. They should be able to film and to edit and to plan, and they should be able to media buy, and they should be able to do comprehensive graphic design, and they should be a photographer, and they should be just on call 24/7 every day of the year. And so I can see it as, there are elements where perhaps if you are in marketing and you are looking to recruit, you are looking at the next generation of marketers coming through, and you're thinking, we need to be supporting these people better to get them into that long-term kind of opportunity and career space. But also we probably need to be sort of checking business expectations of what they are physically requesting one person to do. Within my office, for example, we are a social media marketing agency. I can't do any graphic design. We've got a fantastic graphic designer. I can't do any of that. So to then expect that to come from one person who can do copywriting, ad analysis, strategy, marketing, and graphic design. I've got a better video editor than me who can do just fantastic work, whereas I can sort of, clip something down if needs be. It's all about having that sort of skill. And I see firsthand that skill requirement comes from a team of people, not just one person that can do it all. And I think it's getting that balance right to really address the skill shortage. Some of it is real, and some of it is just because we don't really know what digital marketing is in some spaces.
That's a wonderful reaction. I couldn't agree more. And I think back to you, I was listening to you thinking, yeah, because when I started in marketing, which I know is a long time ago now, at the job interview, the question was, do you know how to use Microsoft Office? That was pretty much it. So now it's like, are you kind of a one-person media machine? Or what do you mean? Like, I'm not need to be a radio producer and a video producer, and I think, yeah, you're right. People have got to be sensible, and actually there's pleasure in having a diverse team, even if you use freelancers to support, employees. What do you make of TikTok? They seem to be breaking their own rules. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but increasing time length of video to 10 minutes. That's a long time, 10 minutes, to be on TikTok. And then audio only. I'm thinking, well, what would that be on TikTok? Interesting, isn't it?
It is really interesting, and I don't know whether TikTok is perhaps looking at this in terms of, well, there's two ways I guess it could be looking at it, and it could be looking at there's opportunity, because we see audiences on TikTok are very, very active and will log in multiple times a day. If the content is longer and it keeps their attention for longer, then TikTok benefits for keeping its users on the platform for longer, which is ultimately the aim of any particular network. There's also perhaps an element of wanting to expand out that TikTok experience, so that dare I say, Pascal, the older generation of social media users, perhaps such as you and I, might be a little bit more, I guess, inclined to use the platform ourselves for creating content if we have a little bit more of a familiar type of content that we can create. So we can create content that we might be creating for other platforms and use that to dip our toe into the water of TikTok. It means that there'll perhaps be a little bit more opportunity to share content between platforms, and it makes it a slightly less scarier place to be. And one of the bigger barriers with older audiences, we see younger audiences are very, very used to media, very used to selfie generations, and wanting to share their own imagery online. Whereas for some thought leaders, or for some that might want to take a bit more of a B2B or a thought leadership kind of approach, the video element could be a little bit off-putting. So interesting to see them bring that audio element in. And I think certainly for that, it will be to keep up with the other platforms that are pioneering audio. We're seeing it as a huge trend. We've spoken about the different platforms that are going to have audio-based options. It's interesting to see them not just stand in isolation with what they do, but actually look to, they've established their presence now. How can they attract more users by diversifying their offering?
Yeah, and do you know what's interesting about this one is back to a conversation you and I've had, which is TikTok, there's a dichotomy between their communication. I get their business e-newsletter, I'm sure you do too. I literally go on TikTok regularly to study and understand, to be able to give advice. My customers are not on TikTok, so I don't have to learn to shuffle or do any of that stuff yet. But to that point, there's some content which is just silly. Some of it is actually, frankly, unacceptable. And then you meant to, as a business, be okay with that and start to publish your content. So they need to tidy that up. And maybe the 10-minute mark is part of that, and maybe create some channels. The other thing about audio only, I wonder if it's also to do with creativity and creating like soundscapes, because the good TikTok videos are incredibly clever, creative, informative, and so on. And I wonder whether it's also the creators who are going to be using sound design as well as audio, as in vocals, to create something different. So we shall see. Very quickly, QR codes. Are your customers talking about it, asking you about it?
Not particularly. I do feel like it's definitely something that we are seeing around more. Yeah, QR codes, I guess from a audience perspective of being able to, perhaps, if you're waiting at a bus stop and there's a print ad or even a kind of digital display ad, and you want to kind of follow that on a digital journey, they are perhaps the first part of call for transitioning between something that is more physical to something that's more digital. I think certainly it's interesting to see, based on the fact that, for anyone who's been out to eat recently, you might have had to scan a QR code to get a menu. Certainly that type of experience has been the first use I've had of QR codes in years. I remember when people used to have them on their business cards the first time round, and kind of reactions to that as a thing, taking you from a business card to a digital business card. Perhaps not the best, most immersive experience, but I think definitely as a bit of a transition on journey, it'll be interesting to see that play out, and whether they stay as something that audiences are more than happy to kind of scan. I think a revolutionary feature that perhaps will not get the recognition it maybe deserves in the timeline is the fact that your camera will now automatically scan them, because the first time round you had to download a QR code scanner, which was a massive faff from the App Store. So I think just the intuitive nature of that gives them a better opportunity of really taking over the world this time round.
Yeah, I mean in fact it's now on the search bar, at the search box, on my mobile phone, because I had to do it a couple of times. I've seen it a lot for movie promotion. So on social media, Roger and I were talking about Uncharted recently, and a few others of recent releases. When you go on social media and it's a static post, there's a QR code you can scan to take you to the trailer and a few other things. Okay, well, that was the news. A bit of a new addition to this recording. Let us know, viewers and listeners, how you feel about it. Me kind of trying to stump Natalie Eminae with some recent news. So we're just nearly at the end of our time together. So we're going to talk about the article of the month, something that I've spotted for you. Then Natalie is going to share our strategy of the month, the social tool of the month triad, and I will close on the content creation tool of the month. So for my article of the month, it's one from The Guardian, which actually was published in November. But the reason I brought it up is because it's all to do with this idea of tidying up. So we are talking about social media. We are talking about using it in a way that is ethical, honest, and positive. But of course, not everybody feels that way. There is a writer, a columnist for The Guardian called Dan Milmo, and he's been keeping track of what has been called the online safety bill, which is essentially law that is going to get passed by the UK government to really tidy up at least the UK element of the internet. It's part of a Techscape kind of article. And just so that people know what we're talking about, and like I said, this one was published in November, but Dan Milmo has been keeping track of progress. This is all to do with essentially putting pressure of a duty of care on firms like Facebook and Google to protect all of us from harmful content. And the risk is substantial fines from Ofcom. So that's kind of the idea of the online safety bill. And there are three areas in terms of the duty of care that we want to see the platforms that we've mentioned today that they should be looking into. So number one, preventing the proliferation of illegal content and activity such as pornography, terrorist material, hate crime, racial abuse, and so on. Number two, ensuring that children are not exposed to harmful content. And number three, particularly for Facebook, that were named a few times during that initial hearing, Twitter and YouTube, ensuring that adults are protecting from legal but harmful content. So there's a whole kind of document that's been put in place. What the bill is going to ask government to sign on, that there would be a permanent joint committee to oversee the act and, of course, its application, but there will be criminal sanctions for users and executives. So that's kind of interesting. So literally, if you are, as a user of Facebook, misbehaving, you will be guilty of a crime just as much as Mark Zuckerberg. So, something to bear in mind. And this idea of sending messages that could convey a threat and so on, it's going to be hard, obviously, to manage. But I think we need to start somewhere, don't we? They are also looking at online advertising, whether or not that should be part of Ofcom's duty under the online safety bill. They want to give increased power for Ofcom to investigate, as opposed to just take the information as given. And that is interesting. Some pressure groups are asking for the bill to contain this idea of no longer people to be able to be anonymous on social media. So if you have an account on Twitter, Facebook, and all the others, it will be you, the real first name and surname, not a pseudonym. So it's kind of interesting. I'm just going to close on the first hearing. The Culture Secretary, Nadine Dorris, was present, and it was at a time where Meta was announced and so on. And she addressed basically Mark Zuckerberg and this communication chief, Nick Clegg, and suggested they should steer clear of the metaverse and concentrate on the real world. So there you have it. It's not the usual selection for me, but I thought we must keep track of what's happening because it have a bearing, of course, on our time and efforts on social media. But for someone like me, and I know you share my views, it is high time if we can tidy up a little. I will have a better job as a mentor and a trainer to get people to use social media as well.
Oh, completely. And I know the easy thing to say in this sort of situation is it doesn't go far enough. But the important thing is it starts us somewhere, and that's an opportunity for progression. Absolutely.
Yeah, super. So I'll put the link in the show notes, but let's then get to you and your strategy of the month.
So my strategy of the month is it's something that we often asked about at Coco, and it's something that we often provide advice on, and that is ensuring that your social media is delivering a clear return on investment. And a lot of people do social media because they know that they should do social media. So my strategy of the month is all around understanding where your social fits with your other business objectives and creating a bit of a cohesive plan, and most importantly, measuring your result. So strategy hint, it's all about your return on investment. And if you're not sure what you are getting from your social media, the most important thing that you can possibly do is take a little bit of a step back. And as we are in March now, it's the end of a quarter. We've still got all to play for the remainder of 2022. but now is a great time to actually check in on your social media performance between Christmas and now, and start to think about whether it's achieving the things that you would like it to achieve, and also get real about how much time and energy you are spending on your social media to understand whether you are delivering a clear return on investment. It tends to be one of those slightly controversial things because a lot of marketers will be like, no, it doesn't work like that. It's a long game, it's a long opportunity, which it is. But there should also be some easy wins in there. So, my strategy hint of the month is take a realistic check at this point of the year as to how well your social's performing. And if it is not performing as well as you would like it to, now is the time to change your strategy. Don't just keep going with it. Make sure that you are, having a little look at what you're doing, having a think about what you could do differently, perhaps having a think about what new tools and the things that we've talked about here, and is there anything that sort of catches your eye and things that you could do a little bit of further research on. But definitely pay attention to that return on investment. It doesn't have to pay off tomorrow for the work that you do today, but you have to be seeing positive growth and the results in the way that you would want them to. And it's a perfect point in the year to spring into spring with a fresh social media start if you're not quite on the right track.
Super. Thank you very much. So wise as ever, but it's so important to do, because I think we can all be guilty. I was thinking just that myself, that you've got your weekly schedule, it's working well for you, you're actually comfortable with it, you keep going, you start to track a little less and so on and so forth. So now this is perfect. Well, with that in mind, do you have a social tool or app for us to try out this month?
I do, and this is because it's an app that we are trying in the office at the moment. So my app of the month is Connect Team. Now we are using this because we're moving to a slightly more flexible working week, so to give members of the team a different kind of work pattern. So if they want to have a little bit more free time, we're also reducing our office hours. So a little bit like you're seeing a bit more of a focus on the kind of work-life balance. It's something that we're trying in the office. I know that's quite trendy. So for any businesses that are trying something similar, this has been a great tool for us to implement on that. But also on it as a business owner, it's something that I've found really, really eye-opening. And what it allows you to do is simply have an app installed on your phone. They can be company apps, so you can have as many users as you need, depending on who you want to kind of monitor in terms of work hours. It automatically produces timesheets, so it's great for managing your time. But for me, I've been using it to give a real indicator as to how much time I'm actually working. Because as a business owner, Pascal, you will know when it's Sunday morning and it's 11 o'clock and you're sat having a cup of coffee thinking, oh, what a lovely day. I'll just check my emails and do a bit of a deep dive on 3 analytic reports. And before you know it, it's 4 p.m. and you're like, that might not have been the best use of a Sunday when I could have had a bit of time to recharge. It's been a great way of actually keeping my working hours in check, or even just allowing me to take a more realistic view of what's actually happening in terms of my own workload. So from an office perspective, we've been using it to allow people to work from home and to work from the office and to check in and to log their hours so they can have more flexibility within their days. For a personal perspective, I have been using it to try and have a little bit more downtime. As a business owner, I think we're all guilty of not necessarily doing that, and to try and keep a check on the amount of work that I'm doing outside of work and be realistic. Will that email wait until Monday on that completely non-urgent thing that I'm suddenly going to try and tackle on Saturday morning when I've promised myself a little bit of time off? But also from a social media perspective, because you can set as many different kind of work tasks as you would like within that. So it's a great opportunity if you are thinking about your return on investment and how much time you're really spending on social networking, to either manage this as a whole and log and clock in and out for when you're doing your social media marketing, or if you are in a situation where you are working on multiple platforms and you are finding that one is taking a little bit more of your time, it's a great way to get a realistic view as to, okay, it's taking taking me 2 hours a week to maintain my Facebook presence. And I know from that I generate X amount of clicks and I actually generate this amount of leads. But also for LinkedIn, it's taken me double the time. I'm getting half the traffic. I'm getting a third of the leads. It's a great way to actually narrow down on a network by network basis as to which content is taking you longer to produce. So it's just been a really great, helpful tool on a mobile app for getting a bit of a handle on time. And hopefully those are 3 different applications that you could potentially use it for that I've found to be personally quite helpful and quite eye-opening over the last couple of weeks. I think we've had it in place for about 6 weeks here,
Wow,
and it's
okay.
been very good so far. There are paid subscription models on it, but for simply just clocking your time, that's completely free. Although, right, they will send you a billion emails trying to get you to upgrade.
Well, that's understandable. The name of the platform again?
Connect Team. That's Connect Team, all one word with just one T in the middle.
Yeah, that's perfect. We'll put the hyperlink in the show notes as well. Brilliant. I mean, I think you're right, because all my customers are talking about, this, another term is hybrid working, which I'm not sure it's right on this occasion, but this idea of a very flexible approach, so long as, it works for everybody. So that's good. I'm going to close with my content creation tool of the month. And this is all linked with the conversation we had throughout about audio. And I think people really, if they haven't already, should invest in a microphone so that, the quality, not just the quality, but also the richness of their voice is communicated, because ultimately that we still operate as marketers and communicators on a first impressions basis. And we've been working very, very hard to write well. We've been working very hard to do good graphics, good videos, and the audio is kind of interesting to me, where people would just do very little in terms of the effort, because of course they will believe that the words that are being expressed is sufficient for credibility. But over a long period of time, and with a view of standing out from literally the noise of audio rooms and more, I think a microphone would be a good part of what you do, just very much like the one you mentioned a moment ago, like having a good laptop and so on. So there's a company, I could have chosen so many, but the company out there called Rode, spelled Rode, they've done an amazing job over the years, started pretty much looking after the professionals and musicians, now looking after business owners. And they've released 2 products recently that I'm quite excited about. So the first one is the Rode NT, as in November Tango, USB Mini. It's a very small microphone, but my goodness, is it powerful. And the reason why I'm excited, because it comes with a free audio software as well, which can further improve the quality of your voice, can also allow you to do some very, very gentle editing before you move on to a different platform. Now, the Rode NT USB is about £99 online, comes with a free software, and as a package, is really quite powerful. The software is called Rode Connect, which is actually the online version of the Rodecaster Pro. Now, just to let you know a bit of a story, I bought the Rodecaster Pro, which is actually being used right now in 2020. It was a hardware, it was actually a small console, and that was in the region of £500. Add on to the microphones and everything else. You get it for free as an online version with a Rode NTSB, so don't think people just do it. That's important. Now, the other one would be, so that's a USB microphone to your laptop. The other one would be maybe you want to use your mobile phone to go online. We talked about the LinkedIn audio room, talk about TikTok and so on. So Rode have something called the Videomic Go II, or Videomic Go II. And it's a little microphone that, with a clamp and everything else, you can find the kind of the kit online, you could plug to your mobile phone, and literally you could capture your voice and give it that full, rich sound, almost lifelike, as opposed to sounding like you are on a bad line, or it's just a bad phone call. And I think between those two, Natalie, people should be able to actually take pleasure in creating audio content, but for the audience, it would be such an enjoyable experience that they're more likely to stick around. I've had that conversation with you before about Zoom fatigue. I don't think it exists so long as the people are being careful. I think there's definitely bad audio fatigue. I remember I was at a conference once, and we had the keynote speaker. That was great. And then we had the breakout rooms. And I chose one where this individual, I don't know what happened, but the audio was so poor. I didn't last more than 10 minutes. I had to leave because it was just so unpleasant to listen to. So that's my content creation tool of the month, allowing you to actually come across as even more credible and professional and just literally a better human being all around with the Rode NT USB or the Rode Videomic Go II. Wow. We've covered a lot in the space of an hour. Thank you so much, Natalie, for all the research. I hope you've enjoyed today again.
Oh, it's been an absolute blast. And I'm off to shop for some microphones now, Pascal, after those top tips. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. And to you, viewers and listeners, thank you so much for your support. Please do send your questions and suggestions to Natalie and I. We're more than happy to react to what you need to know and like to understand better. Until the next one, go out there and remember, it's called social media, so be sociable. Bye for now.